Locomotion and movement. In living beings, one of the significant features is movement. Wide range of movements are exhibited by plants and animals. In unicellular organisms like amoeba, a simple form of movement is streaming of protoplasm. Many organisms show movement of cilia, flagella, and tentacles. Limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. can be moved in human beings. Movements, some of which result in a change of place or location, and such voluntary movements are called locomotion. Some forms of locomotory movements include walking, running, climbing, flying, and swimming. From those affecting types of movements, locomotory structures need not be different. For example, cilia in paramecium helps in locomotion as well as in the movement of food through cytopharynx. Tentacles in hydra are used for capturing its prey and also for locomotion. For changes in body postures and locomotion, we use limbs as well. Movements and locomotion cannot be studied separately as suggested by the above observations. By stating that all locomotions are movements but all movements are not locomotions, the two may be linked. The animal's method of locomotion vary with their habitats and the demand of the situation. Generally, locomotion is for search of food, shelter, mate, suitable breeding grounds, favorable climatic conditions, or to escape from enemies or predators. Types of movement. The three main types of movement the cells of the human body exhibit are amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular. In our body, some specialized cells exhibit amoeboid movement, example macrophages and leukocytes in blood. It is affected by pseudopodia that is formed by the streaming of protoplasm. In amoeboid movement, cytoskeletal elements like microfilaments are also involved. In most of our internal tubular organs, ciliary movement occurs as they are lined by ciliated epithelium. In the trachea, the coordinated movements of cilia help us in removing some of the foreign substances and dust particles inhaled along with the atmospheric air. Through the female reproductive tract, the passage of ova is also facilitated by the ciliary movement. Muscular movement is required for the movement of our limbs, jaws, tongues, etc. In human beings, the majority of multicellular organisms, the contractile property of muscles are effectively used for locomotion and other movements. A perfect coordinated activity of musculoskeletal and neural systems is required for locomotion. You will learn in this chapter about the types of muscles and their structure, mechanism of their contraction, and important aspects of the skeletal system. Muscle. A specialized tissue, the muscle is of mesodermal origin. The muscles contribute to about 40 to 50% of the body weight of a human adult. Special properties in the muscles constitute excitability, contractibility, extensibility, and elasticity. Different criteria, namely location, appearance, and nature of regulation of their activities, were used to classify the muscles. Three types of muscles based on their location are identified. 1. Skeletal, 2. Visceral, and 3. Cardiac. With the skeletal component of the body, skeletal muscles are closely associated. Under the microscope, they have a striped appearance and hence are called striated muscles. They are known as voluntary muscles too, as their activities are under the voluntary control of the nervous system. Primarily, they are involved in changes of body postures and in locomotory actions. In the inner walls of hollow visceral organs of the body, visceral muscles are located like the alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. Any striations are not exhibited by them and are smooth in appearance, hence they are called smooth muscles or non-striated muscles. They are known as involuntary muscles as their activities are not under the voluntary control of the nervous system. They assist, for example, through the digestive tract, they help in the transportation of food, and through genital tract, the gametes. Cardiac muscles, as the name suggests, are the muscles of the heart. In the branching pattern, many cardiac muscle cells assemble to form a cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscles are striated based on appearance. In nature, they are involuntary as their activities are not directly controlled by the nervous system. To understand the structure and mechanism of contraction, let us examine a skeletal muscle in detail. In our body, each organized skeletal muscle is made of a number of fascicles or muscle bundles held together by fascia, a common collagenous connective tissue layer. A number of muscle fibers are present in each muscle bundle. The plasma membrane called sarcolemma lines each muscle fiber enclosing the sarcoplasm. Muscle fiber is a syncytium as many nuclei are present in the sarcoplasm. The storehouse of calcium ions are the muscle fibers of endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum. The presence of a large number of parallelly arranged filaments in the sarcoplasm called myofilaments or myofibrils is a characteristic feature of the muscle fiber. On it, each myofibril has alternate dark and light bands. A detailed study has established that the striated appearance of the myofibril is due to the distribution pattern of two important proteins, actin and myosin. The light bands are called I bands or isotropic bands and contain actin, whereas dark bands contain myosin and is called A or an isotropic band. The proteins actin and myosin are parallel to each other and are arranged as rod-like structures and also to the longitudinal axis of the myofibril. As compared to the myosin filaments, actin filaments are thinner, hence are commonly called thick and thin filaments respectively. An elastic fiber called Z-line is present in the center of each I band and bisects it. The thin filaments are attached to the Z-line firmly. Throughout the length of the myofibrils, the A and I bands are arranged alternately. Between two successive Z lines, the portion of the myofibril is called the sarcomere and is considered as the functional unit of contraction. In a resting state on either sides of the thick filament, the edges of thin filament leave the central part of the thick filaments and partially overlap the free ends of the thick filaments. Not overlapped by thin filaments, this central part of the thick filament is called the H zone. Structure of contractile protein. Two F-actins are present in each actin filament and they are helically wound to each other. Each F-actin is a polymer of monomeric G-actins. Throughout its length, tropomyosin, two filaments of another protein, also run close to the F-actins. At regular intervals, troponin, a complex protein, is distributed on the tropomyosin. A subunit of troponin in the resting state masks the active binding sites for myosin on the actin filament. Each myosin filament also is a polymerized protein. Meromyosins, many monomeric proteins, constitute one thick filament. Two important parts are present in each meromyosin, a globular head with a short arm and a tail, and former is called the heavy meromyosin and the latter is called the light meromyosin. The head and short arm, the HMM component, at regular distance projects outwards an angle from each other from the surface of the polymerized myosin filament and is known as cross arm. An active ATPase enzyme is a globular head and has active sites for actin and binding sites for ATP. Mechanism of muscle contraction. By the sliding filament theory, the mechanism of muscle contraction is best explained, and the theory states that by the sliding of the thin filaments over the thick filaments, contraction of the muscle fiber takes place. By the signal sent by the central nervous system via a motor neuron, muscle contraction is initiated. A motor unit constitutes a motor neuron along with the muscle fibers connected to it. The junction between the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber and a motor neuron is called the neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. A neurotransmitter is released by the neural signal reaching this junction, which generates an action potential in the sarcolemma. This spreads through the muscle fiber and into the sarcoplasm, causes the release of calcium ions. As the calcium ions levels increases, it binds calcium to the subunit of troponin on actin filaments and thereby removes the masking of active sites for myosin. The myosin head utilizes the energy from ATP hydrolysis and binds to the exposed active site on actin to form a cross bridge. The attached actin filament are pulled by this towards the center of A band. Attached to these actins, the Z lines are also pulled inwards, thereby causing a shortening of the sarcomere, that is, contraction. From the above steps, it is clear that the I band gets reduced during shortening of the muscle, that is contraction, whereas the length is retained in the A bands. The myosin goes back to its relaxed state, releasing the ADP and P1. The cross bridge is broken as a new ATP binds. The myosin head again hydrolyzes the ATP, causing further sliding as the cycle of cross bridge formation and breakage is repeated till the calcium ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae. The process continues, resulting in the masking of actin filaments. This causes the Z lines to return back to their original position, that is relaxation. In different muscles, the reaction time of the fibers can vary. When the muscles are repeatedly activated, the lactic acid is accumulated due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen in them, which causes fatigue. A red-colored oxygen-storing pigment is present in the muscle called myoglobin. In some muscles, the myoglobin content is high and gives a reddish appearance, hence such muscles are called red fibers. Plenty of mitochondria is present in these muscles and a large amount of oxygen stored in them is utilized for ATP production. Therefore, these muscles can also be called aerobic muscles. Some of the muscles, on the other hand, appear pale or whitish as they possess very less quantity of myoglobin, and these are the white fibers. In these, the number of mitochondria are few while the amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum is high. For energy, they depend on an aerobic process. Skeletal system. A framework of bones and a few cartilages constitute the skeletal system. In the movement shown by the body, this system has a significant role. Imagine without jaw bones chewing food and without the limb bones walking around. Bone and cartilage are specialized connective tissues. The former, due to calcium salts in it, has a very hard matrix, and the latter, due to chondroitin salts, has a slightly malleable matrix. This system in human beings is made up of 206 bones and a few cartilages. It is grouped into two principal divisions, such as the axial and the appendicular skeleton. Distributed along the main axis of the body, axial skeleton comprises of 80 bones. The axial skeleton constitutes skull, vertebral column, sternum, and ribs. The cranial and facial bones are the two sets of bones the skull is composed of that totals to 22 bones. Cranial bones are 8 in number. They form cranium, a hard protective outer covering for the brain. The front part of the skull, the facial region, is made up of 14 skeletal elements. At the base of the buccal cavity, the single U-shaped bone called hyoid is present, and it is also included in the skull. 3 tiny bones are present in each middle ear, namely malleus, incus, stapes, collectively called ear ossicles. With the help of 2 occipital condyles, the skull region articulates with the superior region of the vertebral column. By 26 serially arranged units called vertebrae forms our vertebral column and is dorsally placed. It constitutes the main framework of the trunk and extends from the base of the skull. A central hollow portion is present in each vertebra through which the spinal cord passes. Atlas, the first vertebra, articulates with the occipital condyles. Starting from the skull, the vertebral column is differentiated into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, coccygeal regions. In almost all mammals, including human beings, the number of cervical vertebrae are 7. The spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column, which also supports the head, and for the ribs, the musculature of the back serves as the point of attachment. On the ventral midline of thorax, sternum is a flat bone. There are 12 pairs of ribs. Each rib, which is a thin flat bone, is dorsally connected to the vertebral column, and to the sternum it is ventrally connected. On its dorsal end, it has two articulation surfaces and is hence called bicephalic. First 7 pairs of ribs are called true ribs. To the thoracic vertebrae, they are dorsally attached, and to the sternum, they are ventrally connected with the help of hyaline cartilage. With the help of hyaline cartilage directly, the 8th, 9th, and the 10th pairs of ribs do not articulate with the sternum but join the 7th rib. These are called vertebrochondral ribs. Ventrally, the last 2 pairs of ribs are not connected and are hence called floating ribs. Together, the thoracic vertebrae, ribs, and sternum form a rib cage. The appendicular skeleton consists of bones of the limbs along with the girdles. Each limb is made of 30 bones. Humerus, radius, and ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges form the bones of the hand. The bones of the legs consist of femur, tibia, and fibula, tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. Ventrally, a cup-shaped bone called patella covers the knee. The articulation of the upper and the lower limbs is brought about by the axial skeleton, pectoral, and pelvic girdle bones respectively. 2 halves form a girdle. A clavicle and a scapula are present in each half of the pectoral girdle. Between the 2nd and the 7th ribs in the dorsal part of the thorax, a large triangular flat bone called scapula is present. The spine, a slightly elevated ridge, is present in the dorsal flat triangular body of scapula, which projects as a flat expanded process called the acromion. The clavicle articulates with this. Below the acromion, a depression called the glenoid cavity articulates with the head of the humerus to form a shoulder joint. Each clavicle is a long slender bone with 2 curvatures. This bone is commonly called the collar bone. 2 coxal bones are present in the pelvic girdle. By the fusion of 3 bones, ilium, ischium, and pubis, each coxal bone is formed. At the point where the above bones fuse, there is a cavity called acetabulum to which the thigh bone articulates. Ventrally, 2 halves of the pelvic girdle meet to form pubis symphysis containing fibrous cartilage. Joints. For all types of movements involving the bony parts of the body, joints are essential. To this, locomotory movements are no exception. The points of contact between bones or between bones and cartilages are the joints. Through joints, force generated by the muscle is used to carry out movement where the joint acts as a fulcrum. Depending on different factors, the movability of these joints vary. The 3 major structural forms of joints have been classified, namely fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial. Any movements are not allowed by the fibrous joints. The flat skull bones show this type of joint which with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue fuse end to end in the form of sutures to form the cranium. The bones involved are joined together in cartilaginous joints with the help of cartilages. In the vertebral column, the joint between the adjacent vertebrae is of this pattern and it permits limited movements. Between the articulating surfaces of the two bones, synovial joints are characterized by the presence of a fluid-filled synovial cavity. Such an arrangement allows considerable movement. These joints help in many other movements and in locomotion. Some of the examples are ball and socket joint, hinge joint, pivot joint, gliding joint, and saddle joint. Disorders of muscular and skeletal systems. Myasthenia gravis, autoimmune disorder affecting neuromuscular junction leading to weakening, fatigue and paralysis of skeletal muscles. Muscular dystrophy, mostly due to genetic disorder, progressive degeneration of skeletal muscles. Tetany, due to low calcium ions in body fluid, rapid spasms in muscles. Arthritis, inflammation of joints. Osteoporosis, age-related disorder characterized by increased chances of fractures and decreased bone mass. A common cause is decreased level of estrogen. Gout, due to accumulation of uric acid crystals, inflammation of joints. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this video with your friends. Leave your comments below and please subscribe to my channel for more content. Click that bell notification that would let you know when a new video is uploaded. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, please subscribe to my channel for more content. For more videos, please check the description box down below.